Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the 5 political rules that have emerged in the age of Yang. All right. Sorry it's a little dark. This is my Garibay noir setting. All right, so let's talk about this. All right, so we are in the age of Yang, and I want each one of you to just really kind of soak this in. We are so incredibly fortunate to be living in this time, witnessing this moment, having this candidate, right? There's been a lot of times in American politics, and I have sat through. I'm 49 years old, and I voted. Let's see how I did it, right? So my voting started in '88, right? And I voted HH, then I voted Mondale, and then I voted. Did I vote? I think it was HH Mondale, and then WW, and then Obama, and then protest, right? And I can tell you right now, I was very excited to vote for. I was very excited to vote for Obama, right? And I'm incredibly excited to vote for Yang. But I don't think I was really ever that excited to vote for HH or W or for HH or WW or Mondale, right? They were, it was often in American politics, it's the lesser of two evils, right? And we don't have that right now. We're so blessed to be in a specific point in time where we do not have to vote for for the lesser of two evils. We have a noble champion. We have an amazing candidate. We have a once in 10 generation candidate, and it's really wonderful, right? This is the age of Yang. So don't for a minute take this for granted. We're incredibly fortunate to be right here in this time, to have somebody really worthy of all our time and attention, of our advocacy, worthy of the role of U.S. presidency. And I'm just incredibly thankful, and I'm just we are in the age of Yang. Don't forget it, right? This is a special time in your life. Don't let a day go by without being thankful for living in the age of Yang. All right. So with the age of Yang, 5 new political rules have emerged. Right now, I think Andrew Yang being in this specific in the 2020 election has highlighted these. Right, the light shining off of him puts each one of these new political rules. These have all emerged, right? This is different. Each one of these is either enhanced in importance or it is completely new, right? And just the light coming off of Yang in this specific point in time in the 2020 election really just kind of shows these, right? So let's get into what they are. All right, I have a mnemonic to remember all 5 of my points. A sequined physician experiencing fresh Ziploc. All right, sequencing. So sequencing, right? Sequencing is incredibly important. It's more important than ever. Timing has always been important in politics, but we got to call this one out, because the reality is the DNC, the Democrats are incredibly bad at timing, right? Their sequencing is horrible, right? So it is my opinion. So I'm a huge fan of Slate Political podcasts, and I go to their live shows, right? And I went to a live show for Slate Political podcast when Hillary Clinton was running. So this was in 2015, right? And I actually asked John Dickerson the following question. You will find this in Slate's archives. It's sitting there right now in the questions and answers back in 2015. And I said, listen, I'm not sure. In 2015, I was like, it looks like Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee, but it seems like it's a really bad idea, because I'm not sure American history has this much elasticity. And what I mean by that is, we had Obama, then we had Obama, and we're going to go from our first African American president to our first female president, right? It's a completely noble goal, right? It makes a lot of sense from this is what should happen perspective, but I am worried that it doesn't make sense from the this is what can happen perspective. Does American history have this much elasticity? Will it, if the Democrat Party is trying to bring about too much change too quickly, couldn't that be a problem, right? And John Dickerson gave the answer. He's like, oh no, I think it'll work out fine. And John Dickerson is brilliant. He actually interviewed Donald Trump. He's the head of CBS's 60 Minutes right now. I've been in the same room with him multiple times because I go to the live show. I've asked questions of him and David Plotz and Emily Bazelon. They're intellectual champions for me. They do political commentary, which clearly that's important to me, right? But John Dickerson, now, it wasn't his fault, right? Like, nobody saw Trump coming, right? Nobody thought, oh, yeah, we can definitely go from the first African-American president, electing him twice, directly into our first female president, right? And again, like, I feel like history has elasticity, right? And I think the Democrats might have thought, hey, we definitely, we need to have an American female president, right? I totally understand that is a goal for the DNC and for the Democrat Party, right? But there's also there's the facts on the ground, right? Like, will history fit this, right? Will history actually allow this much change this fast? Frankly, it didn't. It absolutely did not, right? It seemed like it was a very genuine concern, right? So here's the thing: sequencing, right? You have to understand, is this the right candidate at this time, right? And of course, my issue here is Elizabeth Warren, great candidate, wrong time, right? Her political profile is a complete echo of Hillary Clinton. So the sequencing is wrong, right? She's not the wrong person. She isn't here at the wrong time, right? And her political profile is so much of a match to Hillary Clinton, it's just going to set people back to 2016, and they're going to think they're watching a rerun, and they're going to assume the loss even as the general starts. I'm convinced of this, right? So sequencing is incredibly important. It's more important than ever, and the DNC and the Democratic Party and Democrat voters have to look at sequencing, right? And if something doesn't fit in the right sequence, you can't do it, right? And that's just it. Like, every Democrat needs to understand this. Elizabeth Warren winning the primary is essentially 8 months of her saying everything Democrats want to hear, and then a swift, horrible loss in November. Okay, and it's bad. All right, physician, physical. All right, this is the second rule of modern politics. First rule is you must have your sequencing correct. You must pay attention to sequencing. Sequencing is critical. All right, that's the first rule. All right, the next one is the race for the U.S. presidential primary. The U.S. presidential primary race, and it doesn't matter if it's on the Republican or the Democrat side, right? It is incredibly physical. The U.S. presidency, and you know what? We don't even have to talk about the U.S. primary race. The job of U.S. president from the U.S. primary race through to your last day in office is incredibly physical. Anyone who thinks that you can sit at a desk and do this job anymore is shockingly wrong. All right? When Andrew Yang came to Philadelphia, he came into the crowd, right? There, and I was right at the front of the barrier, right? There was, I think, about 1,000 people behind me. I think there was about 1,000 people at that rally, right? And when Andrew Yang came down to shake everyone's hand, I'm not kidding, I physically got pushed forward like it was a wave. It was only about 8 or 12 inches, but the entire crowd surged forward, right? And I was worried. I was worried that I would be trampled, only for about 5-10 seconds, right? And I'm a big guy. There was small people in front of me. I was like, this is dangerous and uncomfortable, right? It is incredibly physical, right? And that never goes away. And actually, Andrew Yang came right down and leaned back into the crowd for selfies. He was constantly leaning back. He was pushing his body back. He was pushing his shoulders back, right? And then leaning in. And people were holding him up, right? And he was just shaking hands constantly. Germs constantly. Shaking hands, shaking hands, shaking hands. Germs, 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 right? This is an insanely physical job, right? And it does not stop at, and just think of everything Andrew Yang's done. Basketball, eating noodles, crowd surfing, skateboarding, line dancing. Like he runs, he high fives. It is insanely physical, right? The U.S. presidency is a physical job, and it does not stop in the U.S. after the U.S. primary race. Okay, it goes right on, right? U.S. president's got to show up at disaster sites, right? They have to stand for hours. They have to go into other countries that have, viruses that we don't have, right? They have to get shots. They have to globally travel. It is incredibly physical, and you had better be incredibly vibrant. You had better be incredibly resilient. You had better be strong and healthy, right? Like Andrew Yang, like Tulsi Gabbard, right? There is no room. If you are not a darn near perfect physical specimen, you got no business running for president, right? It is a physical job. And I'm shocked that anybody doesn't know this, but clearly people are not getting this, right? Like, people are definitely not getting it. All right, sequin physician, experiencing. Oh my gosh! All right, so wait, let me give that rule real quick. The U.S. presidency is a physical job. That's the rule, okay? And this has emerged. It's clear now, right? The age of Yang puts spotlights on this, right? The job has changed. It is no longer enough to sit at a desk, right? You've got to be in it every minute of the day. You got to be on your feet. You're going to put blood, sweat, and tears into this job, right? And anyone who thinks the U.S. presidency isn't a physical job is out of their mind, right? Okay. The ubiquitous camera has also changed this. The ubiquitous camera demands a physical president, a president who is good with their physical attributes, their strength, their constitution, their dexterity, right? Okay? All right. It's not enough. It's no longer enough to have charisma, intelligence, and wisdom. You've got to have those physical attributes, right? Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Experience. Political experience is now a detriment. It is no longer an advantage. It is clearly a disadvantage, right? Experience. So we absolutely need people to go to college and get political science degrees. I have one, right? But those people can never, ever, ever be allowed to be president, right? Also, lawyers. So basically, anyone with a political science degree, anyone who's spent time being a politician cannot be president. Cannot, right? Here's why. The moment you become a true politician, whether it's a mayor, a governor, or a president, right? Your corruption begins. You have stepped into the swamp, and guess what? No one's draining it. You will marinate in the swamp juice starting on day one, right? So that's it. We want somebody pure, unstained. We want somebody who is not marinated in swamp juice, right? The swamp is real. It is there, right? And the reality is, once you go in, your corruption begins, right? And the people connected with you, they go off and get jobs that they shouldn't have. There are requests that are given to you by people you care about that you probably shouldn't say yes to. It's just, and all kinds of terrible, terrible things begin to happen. You have to make alliances to get to win. And then once you've made those alliances, you owe, right? So basically, the president has to come from the laboring class. They has to come from the laboring class. They can no longer come from the political class. We just can't allow it, right? And the reason why is the president has to go in on day one uncorrupted, right? and of course, this is why Andrew Yang is awesome. He crushed it in education, crushed it in labor, in the corporate world, and he crushed it in the benevolence world, and he comes in unstained. He comes in unmarinated in swamp juice. He does not have green, scaly skin. He does not have a 2-foot wide mouth. His mouth is not filled with fangs, right? The way every politician running right now is, right? Okay? It's really, really critical. All right. Okay, so that one is political experience is a detriment. It is no longer a benefit. Political experience is a disadvantage. It is no longer an advantage. That is new. That has never been the case before. Okay? All right. So here we go. All right. Fresh and Ziploc. All right. Fresh. Your angle of skirmish has to be fresh. All right. Politicians attack politicians, right? It might be a minor slight, but it might be a political daggers out full attack, right? Here's the thing. Gillibrand literally went at Joe Biden with a 30-year-old. You wrote an article 30 years ago, and the article you wrote said some bad things. She looked small and petty, right? Your angle of skirmish, right, has to be fresh. It's got to be right to policy, cannot be personal, right? And it has to be it has to be what they're doing now or what they've done in the last 4 years, current, right? And the reason for this is I think people are sick of gotcha culture. They are very, very, very sick of gotcha culture. They are sick of people going and exhuming mistakes that are 10, 20, 30 years old. And I don't think Americans want to see it because they all know they're all human and anybody can do this to anybody. So when you go and you exhume, you dig up, right, some, 10, 20, 30-year-old thing, and frankly, I'll put a number on it. It's got to be 5 years or less, right? If it happened 5 years or less, that's fair game, right? But we change as people, right? And Americans are realizing this, right? If you're bringing out some crusty old thing that somebody did 10, 20, 30 years ago, that says nothing about the opponent that you are bringing that angle of skirmish attack, and it says that you are small and petty. That's all it says, right? In that moment, you're being small and petty in that moment. I don't think Gillibrand is small or petty. I think she was small and petty in that moment. That behavior was small and petty. I don't think Gillibrand is a small or petty person, but that behavior was small and petty, right? And I think Americans are over it, right? So your angle of skirmish has to be fresh, okay? Process lock. All right, the last one is Ziploc. Process, okay? There is wait. Let me say the last rule. Oh yeah, your angle of skirmish has to be fresh. That one's simple. All right. So here's the last one. We are in process lock. Okay. When you run for presidency, when you enter a U.S. primary presidential race, right? You are in process lock. You cannot complain about the process while you are in it. You knew what the process was before you entered it. You had 4 years to change it, right? And the way we know this now is, I loved the way that Andrew Yang dealt with this, right? Andrew Yang got qualified for like the third debate, and he had really struggled to do it, right? And Tulsi was still struggling to get in, right? And they went to Andrew Yang and they said, "Hey, Tulsi's having a hard time getting in. Is having a hard time getting in. Do you agree with her that these debate requirements are really unfair?" And he says, "Oh, well, I qualified, so that's really no longer a concern," right? And he's like, the process is simply a problem that you as a leader own. It's not something you whine about, right? And that's the issue is, once you get in, right, you better not be talking about electoral colleges or debate qualifications or any of that, right? Once you go into the U.S. presidential primary race, the process is the process. It is simply a problem you own and you have to solve. Because leaders solve problems they don't even own. That is the definition of leadership, right? Whining about the problem is a follower behavior, right? It's follower behavior, right? And so if you, and also just recognize, right? If you see anyone complaining about the process while they're running, that's a follower. That's not a leader. Put them in the back, right? You should definitely not be voting for him, right? And I think Andrew Yang 100% gets this, right? He's like, all of the process, all the DNC issues, the super delegates, all the nonsense, the caucuses, all of it. Once you enter, 2 men, the Thunderdome rules. 2 people enter, 1 person leaves, right? Woke Thunderdome. Once you go in, no complaining about the process. Just get it done. Get it done. That's what I love about Yang. He is just getting it done. Andrew Yang crushes it. And he follows every single one of these rules, right? He gets his sequencing right? He realizes this is a physical job, right? He doesn't have that disgusting swamp marinated political experience, right? He and then in addition to that, he keeps his angle of skirmish fresh, right? And he does not complain about the process. He sees the process as a problem he must defeat, right? It's a problem he will take ownership of even if it doesn't belong to him, because he's a true leader. He's not a follower, right? And just watch out. If you see anybody doing that, complaining about the process, you're looking at a follower. That ain't a leader. And don't put him in a leader role, which the U.S. presidential primary candidate is. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.